WFF serves a lot of young emerging leaders. What advice do you have about how they can apply values-based leadership early in their career?
One of the things, Fritzi, I think becomes very important is that for somebody who's going to be a leader, that they begin to lead long before they have anybody reporting to them. The whole idea that maybe even as an individual, what can I do to influence people? What can I do to demonstrate and get people motivated and passionate, whether they have anybody reporting to them or not?
This whole struggle and discussion around work-life balance is one that's talked about a lot. You have a different point of view about work-life balance. Would you share that?
I like to think of this whole topic as life balance, because most of us really are trying to balance our career, our family, our spirituality, our health, a sense of having fun, social responsibility, and taking the time to figure out what really is important, how am I going to balance these different initiatives, and doing it explicitly as opposed to implicitly, thinking about it proactively as opposed to reactively.
The WFF has done research on derailers to advancing women's careers. One of those derailers is the issue of balancing humility and confidence. Can you share your perspective on this issue?
I think sometimes, particularly women, are struggling with how do I keep these in balance? And my opinion is that both of them are very important. I want to make sure that I have enough true self-confidence to know that I'm good, that I can add a lot of value, that I am recognized, and that I'm not going to get passed over. And at the same time realizing that every single person matters, that I am going to make sure that I check my ego at the door and I have genuine humility. But having genuine humility, to your point, does not mean that I'm not going to be recognized, that I'm not going to let people know that I am worthy and I can do other things and be promoted throughout the organization.
If there's a tip you can give women about how they can demonstrate confidence, what would that one tip be?
I do believe that women need to be more proactive of, again, they can be humble about it, but letting people know how good they are, how great of a job they're doing, how they're developing their people so that they do get recognized. Because I do think there is a tendency, if the woman is more quiet, that she could very easily get passed over.
What advice would you give to women in particular about how to assess and mitigate risk as they move up in their careers?
If you're really going to develop, you're going to have to take risks. You're going to have to take a chance. And obviously that means you could fail. And often when students will say to me, you know, I haven't really failed at all, is that bad? I'll start to joke with them and say, well, let's think about this. If the reason you haven't failed is because you've been very, very lucky, good for you. But if you haven't failed because you didn't take a risk, you didn't get out of your comfort zone, it's going to be very, very difficult to grow. So to have enough self-confidence to say, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone, I'm going to take a risk, I think that is paramount to becoming a leader.
Fastest way to recover from a mistake?
I believe the faster I can let folks on the team know that I did make a mistake and that I learned something from it, and here's what I'm going to do so I can minimize the chance of that happening again, that's huge.
How should we be thinking about leadership and management when we think about managing up?
I have to have enough true self-confidence, but to be able to do it in a respectful way to influence you so that we can be as productive as possible, both myself and my team. And to be able to question and challenge you and do it respectfully so that you don't see me as a threat, you see this as something that's helpful and constructive as you move the organization forward.
You talk a lot in your value-based leadership about self-reflection. Tell us about how that's such a powerful tool for a leader.
We're all very busy. We've all got a lot of things to do, and there really is a tendency as we get busy to continuously just move faster and faster. I describe that sometimes as confusing activity and productivity. But I think if someone is going to truly be an effective leader, they need to step back, turn off the noise, and really start to think through what really matters. What are my values? What are my goals? What do I stand for? And I think by stepping back and starting to think about some of those things, I can start to think through how can I prioritize?
What can women do to accelerate their ability to build high-performing teams?
The ability to be able to provide ongoing, continuous feedback. so that I can let every single person on my team know what they do well, what they need to improve, and what are the things I can help them to develop their true potential. And if you think about it, the quicker I can make those things happen, the quicker I can make myself replaceable, the faster I can continue to get promoted throughout the organization.
What's your tip for leaders on ensuring they have the organization aligned on the top priorities?
I think there's a couple things that need to happen. Number one, if you think about the number of things that are going on in a lot of organizations, there's a tendency sometimes for people to think about silos. Some group of people, if you're really going to prioritize, has to get their arms around the entire organization. What divisions are we in? What businesses are we in? What functions are we in? How do they relate to one another? So getting this overall global perspective, I think, becomes important, number one. And number two, once you have that, you got to be able to effectively communicate it. Because if you're the only one, or there's only a few people that really can communicate, you got a problem. Because you need to make sure that every single person in the organization understands what are we doing, why are we doing it, how are we doing it, and they feel that they are empowered enough to be able to challenge people in the organization.
We have a competency that we call influence and diplomacy. How should they think about using that to not only influence the people they manage, but the people they report to?
If you're my boss, I think some people can look at it as, my job is really to do what you're asking me to do. You're the boss, and I'm going to try to do my job. But I think if I'm a real leader, what I ought to be doing is figuring out a way to have influence. Now, to the extent that I have a better understanding of what your issues are, what your challenges are, what the opportunities, and I can demonstrate that I'm actually part of the solution. And I'll do it in a way that is not threatening, that I may ask some questions, that I may ask, what did your boss ask you to do? Now, I will do what you want me to do. However, would it make sense if we thought about it a little bit differently? If we took it and looked at it from another angle? Are there some things that we could do, again, not as a threat, but to demonstrate constructively that we can move things forward?
Thank you, Harry. Your comments have been both insightful and I'm sure will provide incredible value to our membership. We appreciate you being a part of the Women's Foodservice Forum family.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope to interact with your team in the future.
Thank you.